Selfies are a common part of our everyday lives, but for some, they mark the final moments before tragedy strikes. These stories are sobering reminders that life can change in an instant. In this video, we will explore 6 of the most chilling selfies captured moments before death, reflecting on the importance of safety, even when chasing that perfect shot. It was February 27, 2015, and 18-year-old Dalen Mokpua woke up early in his grandmother's house in Kaneohe, Hawaii, with adventure on his mind. The athletic teenager had always been drawn to Hawaii's most challenging hiking trails, spending weekends exploring hidden waterfalls and remote beaches that most tourists never discovered. His friends knew him as fearless, the type of guy who would climb the tallest coconut palm or dive from the highest cliff without hesitation. Dalen had been researching the infamous haiku stairs for months, studying online forums and watching YouTube videos of other hikers who had attempted the illegal trail. Known locally as the Stairway to Heaven, the 4,000-step metal staircase had been built during World War II to access a military radio station but had been closed to the public since 1987. The trail was notorious for its narrow passages, some sections only 18 inches wide, with sheer drops of over 2,000 feet on either side. His grandmother Martha had repeatedly warned him about the dangers, sharing stories of hikers who had fallen to their deaths or become lost in the dense jungle surrounding the stairs. But Dalen was confident in his abilities, having successfully completed dozens of challenging hikes across Oahu's mountain ranges. He told his family he was going on a routine hike that morning, carefully avoiding any mention of his true destination. At 6:30 a.m., he grabbed his backpack, phone, and water bottle, kissing his grandmother goodbye before heading out into the humid Hawaiian morning. The first few hours of Dalen's climb went smoothly as he sent regular selfies and photos to his grandmother, documenting his progress up the steep metal stairs. His early photos showed him smiling confidently, the lush green mountains of Oahu stretching endlessly behind him. As he climbed higher, the views became more spectacular, but the trail also became increasingly treacherous, with rusted metal steps and missing handrails creating deadly obstacles. Around 10:30 a.m., Dalen took what would become his most famous and mysterious photograph. The image showed him posing on the stairs, but in the background, barely visible among the dense vegetation, was a dark figure crouching in the bushes. The figure appeared to be watching him, though its identity and intentions remain unknown to this day. Dalen continued climbing, unaware that someone, or something, might be following his progress. At exactly 11:00 a.m., Dalen's regular stream of photos and messages suddenly stopped without explanation. His phone showed no further activity, and his grandmother began to worry when hours passed without contact. Other hikers in the area later reported hearing desperate cries for help echoing through the jungle, with voices shouting, "Help me! I'm down here!" But despite extensive searching, no one could locate the source of the calls. When Dalen failed to return home that evening, his family immediately contacted authorities and reported him missing. The Honolulu Fire Department launched a massive search operation that would continue for 5 days, involving helicopters, ground teams, volunteers, and even the U.S. Navy. Drones scoured the dense jungle canopy while experienced climbers rappelled down cliff faces, but no trace of Dalen was ever found. The search efforts continued sporadically for years, with volunteers and family members refusing to give up hope. The mysterious figure in Dalen's final photograph sparked countless theories and investigations, but its identity was never determined. In 2021, the haiku stairs were finally scheduled for removal due to safety concerns and illegal trespassing, but Dalen's disappearance remains one of Hawaii's most haunting unsolved mysteries. It was April 1st, 2014, and best friends Chris Creamers and Lizanne Froon were living their dream adventure in the mountain town of Boquete, Panama. The 21 and 22-year-old Dutch students had arrived 2 weeks earlier to volunteer teaching local children, staying with a welcoming host family who had quickly grown fond of the enthusiastic young women. Both were experienced travelers who had backpacked through Europe together, but the dense jungle terrain of Central America presented challenges they had never encountered before. Chris, a cultural social work student, was known for her infectious laugh and ability to connect with people from any background. Lizanne, studying applied psychology, was the more cautious of the two, always researching destinations thoroughly and keeping detailed travel journals. They had spent their first weeks in Panama learning basic Spanish phrases and exploring the charming coffee town of Boquete, taking hundreds of photos to share with friends and family back in the Netherlands. The girls had planned their hike on the popular El Pianista Trail as a simple day trip, bringing along their host family's dog for companionship and protection. The trail was well known among tourists for its beautiful views of the surrounding mountains and cloud forests, typically taking 2 to 3 hours to complete. They packed light snacks, water bottles, and their cameras, excited to capture Panama's natural beauty and add new photos to their growing collection of travel memories. The morning started perfectly as Chris and Lizanne took cheerful selfies at the trailhead, their faces beaming with excitement as they posed with the family dog. The first hour of hiking was exactly what they had hoped for: scenic views, exotic birds, and the peaceful sounds of the jungle surrounding them. Their early photos showed them laughing and enjoying each other's company, completely unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. As they continued deeper into the jungle, their photos began to show a subtle change in mood. The smiles became less frequent, and their expressions grew more serious as the trail became less defined and more challenging to navigate. Around 1:00 p.m., they took their final daytime photos before mysteriously continuing past the trail's normal endpoint, venturing into uncharted territory where few tourists had ever traveled. 6 hours later, at 4:39 p.m., their phones registered the first of what would become 77 desperate attempts to call emergency services. The calls showed a pattern of increasing panic as the girls realized they were lost and in serious danger. Only one call managed to connect for exactly 2 seconds before the signal was lost, leaving them stranded without any means of communication with the outside world. When the girls failed to return that evening, their host family immediately contacted local authorities and launched a search operation. The initial efforts involved local police, volunteers, and eventually international search teams, but the dense jungle terrain made progress extremely difficult. For 10 weeks, there was no trace of Chris and Lizanne, leading to widespread speculation about their fate. The breakthrough came when a local woman discovered Lizanne's backpack by a riverbank, perfectly preserved and containing their phones, camera, and other personal items. The camera revealed the most disturbing evidence: 90 photos taken during the night of April 8th, 7 days after their disappearance. The haunting images showed makeshift markers, plastic bags, and what appeared to be attempts to signal for help in complete darkness. Search teams eventually found scattered remains along the riverbank, with some bones mysteriously bleached white despite the short time period. Most disturbing was the discovery that one crucial photo had been deliberately deleted from the camera. The case remains officially unsolved, with theories ranging from tragic accident to foul play, but the truth about what happened to Chris and Lizanne may never be known. It was January 19th, 2019, and 36-year-old Gigi Wu was preparing for another solo climbing adventure in Taiwan's Yushan National Park. Known internationally as the Bikini Climber, Gigi had built a massive social media following by taking provocative selfies in bikinis atop mountain summits over 13,000 feet high. Her unique combination of serious mountaineering skills and eye-catching photography had earned her thousands of followers who eagerly awaited each new post from her daring adventures. Despite her provocative online persona, Gigi was a highly experienced and safety-conscious climber who always wore proper gear during her ascents. She had completed over 100 successful climbs throughout Asia, including some of the region's most challenging peaks. Her routine was always the same: climb in full winter gear, reach the summit safely, quickly change into a bikini for photos, then immediately return to proper clothing for the descent. Gigi's friends and fellow climbers respected her technical skills and knowledge of mountain safety protocols. She carried satellite communication devices, emergency supplies, and always filed detailed climbing plans with local authorities. Her social media posts often included safety tips and warnings about the dangers of mountain climbing, despite the seemingly reckless nature of her signature bikini photos. This particular trek to Taiwan's tallest mountains was meant to be another routine adventure for her popular Instagram account. Gigi had climbed in this area multiple times before and was familiar with the terrain and weather patterns. She had checked conditions carefully and planned her route to avoid the most dangerous sections during the winter season. The climb began successfully as Gigi made steady progress up the mountain, documenting her journey with regular photos and GPS updates. She reached the summit without incident and took her signature bikini selfie, quickly changing back into her winter gear as temperatures dropped below freezing. The descent started normally, but tragedy struck when she slipped on an icy section and fell into a deep ravine. Unable to move due to serious injuries from the fall, Gigi managed to use her satellite phone to call for help and alert rescue services to her location. She provided detailed coordinates and described her condition, but weather conditions were rapidly deteriorating as a winter storm moved into the area. Rescue teams were dispatched immediately, but faced dangerous conditions that prevented them from reaching her quickly. As hours passed, hypothermia began setting in while Gigi waited for rescue in the freezing ravine. She made several more calls to update rescuers on her condition, but her voice grew weaker with each conversation. The rescue teams worked frantically to reach her location, but the combination of harsh weather, difficult terrain, and approaching darkness made progress extremely slow. Despite the heroic efforts of rescue teams, Gigi succumbed to hypothermia before they could reach her location. Her death shocked her thousands of followers who had watched her daring adventures for years, many of whom had never considered the real dangers behind her spectacular photos. The incident sparked widespread debates about the risks of extreme selfie culture and the responsibility of social media influencers to promote safety. Mountain rescue organizations used Gigi's case to emphasize the importance of proper safety measures and backup plans, even for experienced climbers. Her story became a cautionary tale about how even the most skilled adventurers can fall victim to unexpected circumstances, and how the pursuit of social media content should never compromise basic safety protocols. It was October 25, 2018, and married couple Meenakshi Murthy and Vishnu Viswanath were exploring Yosemite National Park as part of their ongoing documentation of America's most beautiful natural landmarks. The 30- and 29-year-old software engineers from India had built a popular travel blog called Holidays and Happily Ever Afters, sharing their adventures with thousands of Instagram followers who loved their stunning photography from dangerous and scenic locations around the world. Meenakshi and Vishnu had met in college and bonded over their shared love of travel and photography. After moving to the United States for work, they had spent their weekends and vacations exploring national parks, always seeking the most dramatic and photogenic viewpoints. Their Instagram account featured breathtaking images from cliff edges, mountain peaks, and other precarious locations that required careful planning and considerable risk-taking. The couple was known among their followers for pushing boundaries to capture the perfect shot, often posing near cliff edges and dangerous viewpoints that made viewers nervous just looking at the photos. Ironically, Meenakshi had previously written about selfie dangers on their blog, asking, "Is our life worth just a photo?" But the pursuit of spectacular content for their growing social media presence seemed to override their awareness of the risks involved. Their Yosemite trip was planned as a multi-day photography expedition, with Taft Point being one of their most anticipated locations. The scenic overlook was famous among photographers for its unobstructed views and lack of safety railings, allowing for dramatic photos that appeared to show people suspended in midair above the valley floor 800 feet below. On that fateful afternoon, Meenakshi and Vishnu set up their camera on a tripod at Taft Point, carefully positioning themselves near the cliff edge for what they hoped would be their most spectacular selfie yet. Other visitors watched as they arranged their shot, adjusting the camera angle and testing different poses to achieve the perfect composition. The couple appeared confident and experienced, showing no signs of concern about the dangerous location. They activated the camera's timer function and moved into position for their final photo, standing close together near the edge of the cliff with the vast Yosemite Valley stretching out behind them. As the camera counted down to capture the image, something went wrong. Whether they lost their balance, stepped too close to the edge, or were affected by wind, both Meenakshi and Vishnu fell together off the cliff. Their camera continued recording, capturing the moments before and after their fatal fall. Other visitors who witnessed the tragedy immediately called for help, but there was nothing that could be done. The couple had fallen 800 feet to the valley floor below, and the impact was instantly fatal. The National Park Service recovered their bodies and confirmed that they had died from the trauma of the fall. Their camera and tripod were found exactly where they had set them up, containing the final photos and videos that documented their last moments. The images showed their excitement and anticipation, completely unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. Their deaths became international news and sparked renewed discussions about selfie culture and the extreme risks people take for social media content. Their story was widely cited as an example of how the pursuit of the perfect photo can lead to fatal consequences even for experienced travelers who understood the dangers involved. It was November 2017, and 20-year-old Toni Kelly was living her dream European adventure, documenting every moment for her thousands of social media followers back in New Zealand. The vibrant young woman had saved for months to afford the trip, working multiple jobs while studying to fund her travels across Europe. Her infectious enthusiasm and creative photography had earned her a growing following of people who loved experiencing her adventures vicariously through her posts. Toni had been traveling for several weeks, visiting Paris, Amsterdam, and other major European cities before arriving in London. She was staying in a modest hotel in the city center, excited to explore the historic landmarks and cultural attractions that she had dreamed of seeing since childhood. Her social media accounts were filled with photos from famous locations, always featuring her bright smile and adventurous spirit. The evening of the incident had been particularly enjoyable for Toni, who had spent the day sightseeing and socializing with other travelers she had met at her hotel. She had been documenting her London experience with various photos and was known among her followers for taking creative selfies that captured both her personality and the beauty of her surroundings. Her room on the second floor offered views of the London cityscape, which she found inspiring for photography. As the evening progressed, Toni decided to take one final selfie from her hotel room window to capture the London lights behind her. She had been drinking earlier in the evening and was in high spirits about her travel experiences, eager to share another memorable image with her followers. The window in her room opened fully, providing an unobstructed view of the street below and the city beyond. Toni opened the second floor window and leaned out to get the perfect angle for her photo, trying to frame herself against the London skyline. In her attempt to capture the ideal shot, she leaned too far out of the window and lost her balance. The combination of alcohol, the awkward position required for the selfie, and the height of the window created a deadly situation that unfolded in seconds. She fell from the second floor to the pavement below, suffering severe brain injuries from the impact with the concrete. Other hotel guests heard the commotion and immediately called emergency services, who arrived within minutes and rushed Toni to the hospital in critical condition. Medical teams worked frantically to save her life, but the trauma to her brain was too severe. Despite the best efforts of medical professionals, Toni never recovered from her injuries and passed away in the hospital several days later. A coroner's inquest later revealed that she had alcohol and cocaine in her system at the time of the fall, which likely contributed to her impaired judgment and loss of balance. In a final act of generosity, Toni's family made the decision to donate her organs, giving others a second chance at life through her tragedy. Her death became international news as another example of selfie-related fatalities among young travelers, prompting discussions about hotel window safety and the risks of taking selfies from dangerous positions. It was August 2014, and 21-year-old Oscar Otero Aguilar was enjoying a night out with friends in Mexico City, celebrating and socializing in the carefree way that young people do when they feel invincible. Oscar was known among his social circle as someone who loved being the center of attention, always ready with a joke or willing to do something outrageous to get a laugh. His Facebook account was filled with bold photos and attention-grabbing posts that showcased his outgoing personality and desire to stand out from the crowd. The 21-year-old had grown up in a working-class neighborhood of Mexico City, where showing toughness and fearlessness was often seen as a mark of respect among young men. Oscar worked at a local auto parts store during the day but lived for his evenings and weekends, when he could hang out with friends and escape the routine of daily life. His social media presence was important to him, and he was always looking for new ways to create dramatic and memorable posts that would impress his followers. That particular evening, Oscar and his friends had been drinking and celebrating at a small gathering when someone brought out a handgun. In Mexico, where gun violence was a serious problem, firearms were unfortunately not uncommon in certain social circles. The group was in a celebratory mood and had been taking various photos throughout the evening, documenting their night out with the kind of casual snapshots that young people share constantly on social media platforms. Oscar was particularly excited about the opportunity to take what he thought would be an edgy and impressive selfie. He had built his online reputation on posting bold and attention-grabbing content, and the presence of the gun seemed like the perfect prop for a dramatic photo that would get reactions from his Facebook friends. None of the group realized the weapon was loaded, treating it as a harmless accessory rather than the deadly instrument it actually was. As the evening progressed and the alcohol continued to flow, Oscar's judgment became increasingly impaired. He decided to pose for what he thought would be the ultimate dramatic selfie, holding the loaded gun to his head in a pose he believed would look tough and impressive. His friends watched as he positioned the weapon against his temple, completely unaware of the tragic consequences that were about to unfold. Oscar held his phone in one hand while pressing the gun against his head with the other, trying to frame the perfect shot that would capture both his face and the weapon in a way that looked dramatic and dangerous. As he attempted to take the selfie, his finger accidentally triggered the gun's mechanism while he was focused on getting the right angle for the photo. The weapon discharged instantly, shooting him in the head at point-blank range. The sound of the gunshot shocked everyone in the room as what had been a fun photo session turned into a horrific accident in the span of seconds. Oscar collapsed immediately, blood pooling around his head as his friends screamed and tried to comprehend what had just happened. Emergency services were called immediately, and Oscar was still alive when paramedics arrived at the scene. The medical team worked frantically to stabilize him and rushed him to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe. He tragically died in the ambulance on the way to receive medical treatment, never making it to the operating room where doctors might have been able to save his life. Mexico's Ministry of Public Security investigated the incident and confirmed the death as accidental, though they also arrested one of Oscar's friends who had been present at the scene. Another friend fled before police could question him, adding to the chaos and confusion surrounding the tragedy. The case became widely reported throughout Mexico and internationally as a stark example of the deadly risks of combining weapons with social media culture. Oscar's death served as a tragic reminder of how the pursuit of dramatic social media content can lead to fatal consequences, especially when combined with alcohol and poor judgment. His story became part of a growing catalog of selfie-related deaths that highlighted the dangerous lengths some people will go to for online attention and validation. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've heard the most heartbreaking selfie tragedies, we're just getting started. Click the next video for the next stories that will leave you questioning how quickly dreams can turn into nightmares. When humans and wild animals collide, the results can be both tragic and terrifying. These 6 disturbing deaths remind us that despite our technology and civilization, we remain vulnerable to nature's most powerful predators. It was March 11, 2019. The underground fighting arena in Tijuana, Mexico was packed with spectators. Cigarette smoke hung thick in the air as men shouted bets across the 15-foot concrete pit. No one knew that in less than an hour, 32-year-old Joaquin Salazar would die in that same pit, torn apart by the very animals he'd trained to kill. Joaquin wasn't born into the cartel world. Standing 5 feet, 10 inches, and weighing 190 pounds, he'd grown up in Tijuana's poorest district, discovering early that he had a way with aggressive dogs. He was breaking up street fights between strays with his bare hands. By 25, he'd caught the attention of local cartel members who needed someone to handle their fighting dogs. Joaquin believed that dogs responded only to dominance. He maintained control through fear, starving the animals before fights and administering brutal punishments for disobedience. This approach made him valuable to the cartel, which soon expanded his role from dog handler to debt enforcer. Joaquin worked 7 years in a dual role, using his pit bulls to intimidate debtors into settling accounts. His brutal reputation grew in Tijuana's underworld. Joaquin's methods were effective because he treated both animals and humans as creatures to be dominated. What no one realized was that his control was entirely dependent on projecting strength at all times. The moment that facade cracked, the animals would turn on him. That night, 2 prized fighters, a 70-pound red-nosed pit bull and an 85-pound mixed breed, had been battling for 27 minutes. Both were covered in wounds, exhausted but locked in a standoff. The crowd was growing restless. Joaquin's boss ordered him to separate the dogs. Security footage later showed Joaquin had been drinking heavily. Empty tequila bottles were found in the preparation area where he'd been waiting between matches. Witnesses reported that as he entered the pit, he stumbled slightly. The dogs, already in a blood frenzy, sensed the weakness immediately. According to one handler who later spoke to investigators, Joaquin's usual commanding presence was absent that night. He entered the pit unsteadily, his movements lacking the authority the animals had been conditioned to fear. As Joaquin approached with a breaking stick, the larger dog released its opponent and turned on him instead. Its jaws locked onto his forearm with 235 pounds of pressure. When Joaquin screamed and tried to kick it away, 3 other dogs being held in nearby cages broke free. Within seconds, all 5 animals swarmed him. He fell backward, and the pack targeted his throat and face. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as spectators scrambled back. For nearly 3 minutes, no one intervened. Bystanders later told police they were afraid to enter the pit with 5 frenzied fighting dogs. By the time handlers managed to pull the animals off using fire extinguishers, Joaquin had suffered catastrophic injuries. His throat was torn open, his face unrecognizable. He died in the pit, in the same pool of blood where he'd forced countless animals to fight. A 92-second video of the attack leaked online 3 days later. The graphic footage led to a police raid. The surviving dogs were taken to rehabilitation centers, though experts noted many were too traumatized for adoption. Joaquin's death revealed the brutal reality of dogfighting rings, places where violence creates more violence in an endless cycle. The man who thought he controlled killers became their victim the moment he showed weakness, proving his own dark philosophy tragically correct. It was April 4th, 2016. The sun beat down on Kakadu National Park, Australia. The Benson family, Laura, Thomas, and their 4-year-old daughter Emily, pulled their rental car alongside a secluded billabong after hours of driving. Despite clearly visible warning signs about crocodiles, they decided this peaceful spot would be perfect for a lunch break. The family had been traveling across Australia for 2 weeks, documenting their journey on social media. Laura particularly prided herself on finding authentic experiences away from tourist crowds. This determination to experience the real Australia had led them down a remote dirt road to this isolated billabong. After unpacking lunch, the family saw crocodile warnings by the water. Thomas was worried, but the 91-degree heat and clear water were too tempting. Laura insisted they'd be fine if they stayed in the shallows and stayed alert. Their fatigue from the long drive clouded their judgment. They dismissed the faded warning signs as overly cautious, trusting the calm, clear water. After finishing their sandwiches, Laura suggested they cool off with a quick swim. Thomas hesitated but eventually agreed. Emily remained near the shore, playing with pebbles under their watchful eyes as her parents waded into the billabong. Laura moved confidently into waist-deep water, about 15 feet from shore. Thomas stayed closer to Emily, the water reaching just above his knees. For a few blissful moments, the family enjoyed the cool relief from the Australian heat. The attack came without warning. At approximately 2:17 in the afternoon, the water around Laura erupted in a violent splash. Her scream pierced the air as a massive saltwater crocodile, later estimated to be 16 feet long, clamped its powerful jaws around her thigh. Thomas immediately rushed toward his wife, shouting for help, though no one was within earshot. Before he could reach her, the crocodile executed a death roll, a violent spinning maneuver that crocodiles use to tear chunks from prey. Laura disappeared beneath the churning, bloodied water. Panicking and now chest-deep in the billabong, Thomas turned back toward Emily. He attempted to lift her completely out of the water and onto the bank, but in those crucial seconds, the predator seized Thomas by the hip, dragging him under with terrifying speed. Emily was left alone on the bank, crying for her parents who had vanished before her eyes. The entire attack had taken less than a minute. For 40 minutes, Emily remained alone by the billabong, her cries eventually attracting the attention of campers approximately half a mile away. They alerted park rangers, who arrived to find the traumatized child and the family's belongings scattered along the shore. A massive search operation was launched, but experienced rangers knew recovery was unlikely. 2 days later, wildlife officials shot 2 large crocodiles in the area. Examination of the larger specimen revealed human remains in its digestive tract, including Laura's wedding ring, and bone fragments later identified through DNA testing as belonging to both victims. Today, the billabong remains as serene and deadly as ever, a reminder that in Australia's wilderness, nature's warnings must never be ignored. The Benson's story continues to be used in safety briefings for tourists, a tragic example of how quickly paradise can turn to horror when wild animals are underestimated. It was November 29, 2017, a crisp autumn morning at the Guangzhou Wildlife Park in China. The sun had barely risen over the tiger enclosure as senior zookeeper Cheng Wu, 41, entered the habitat for routine cleaning. Security cameras captured his final moments, a dedicated professional who never realized he was walking into a death trap. Cheng was a quiet, methodical man who commanded respect throughout Asia's zoological community. Born to rural farmers in Hunan province, he had developed an early fascination with predators after encountering a wild leopard cat as a child. This childhood experience led him to pursue zoology at Beijing University, where he specialized in big cat behavior and eventually published several influential papers on captive tiger enrichment. Cheng often emphasized to trainees that there were no dangerous animals, only careless humans, a philosophy that made his eventual fate all the more tragic. Cheng Wu wasn't supposed to be working that morning. After 15 years as a zookeeper, he had earned his senior position and rarely handled morning cleanings, but a colleague had called in sick, and Cheng, known for his dedication, volunteered to cover the shift. The Guangzhou Wildlife Park housed 5 Bengal tigers in a 10,000-square-foot enclosure with a central feeding platform. The habitat featured a double-gate safety system. Tigers would be secured in the night quarters while keepers cleaned the main area. For 15 years, this system had worked flawlessly. But that morning, a critical communication breakdown occurred. The overnight keeper had begun the feeding sequence but was called away for an emergency. He failed to log that the rear gate remained unlocked. The tigers had been partially fed but not fully secured. At 6:47 in the morning, security footage shows Cheng entering the enclosure carrying cleaning supplies. Believing that all tigers had been secured, Cheng moved confidently toward the feeding platform, which needed scrubbing after the previous day's meals. With this false sense of security, he began vigorously cleaning dried blood and meat residue from the surface, unaware that the feeding protocol had only been partially completed. The metallic scent of blood quickly spread through the morning air. Unknown to Cheng, this powerful odor acted as a dinner bell for the 3 tigers still in the enclosure. The security camera captured movement in the vegetation behind him. 3 adult Bengal tigers, each weighing approximately 450 pounds, emerged silently from the foliage. Their behavior changed visibly as they detected the scent of blood. Their postures lowered, ears flattened, and pupils dilated. Classic predatory responses to the smell of potential prey. The lead tiger paused about 15 feet away, nostrils flaring as it processed the intoxicating scent. The smell of blood had triggered their hunting instincts, overriding any familiarity they might have had with Cheng. To them, he was now associated with food. Kang lunged, clamping his jaws around Cheng's shoulder with 1,000 pounds of pressure. The impact knocked Cheng forward, his cleaning brush flying from his hand. The second tiger, a female named Mei, immediately attacked his legs while the third circled. Cheng's training kicked in. He curled into a protective ball, covering his neck. But against 3 adult tigers, he stood no chance. The animals dragged him from the platform, taking turns attacking different parts of his body. The attack lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Early arriving visitors witnessed the horror through safety glass, their screams alerting other staff. By the time the emergency response team arrived with tranquilizer guns, Cheng had suffered catastrophic injuries to his abdomen, throat, and limbs. Medical reports confirmed that Cheng died from blood loss and traumatic injury. He had lost a lot of blood before emergency responders could reach him. The tragedy triggered immediate changes at zoos across China. The State Forestry Administration launched a nationwide safety audit of all facilities housing dangerous animals. Guangzhou Wildlife Park implemented a 3-person verification system for all enclosure entries, with mandatory radio confirmations from multiple staff members. None of the tigers were euthanized, a decision Cheng's family supported, believing he would have wanted them to live. He had always understood the risks of his profession. Today, Cheng's death led to important safety changes in zoos across Asia. Most facilities now use a protected contact system where keepers never enter the same space as dangerous animals. Barriers with feeding ports and cleaning access allow staff to care for tigers without direct exposure to them. While these changes came too late for Chung, they have prevented similar tragedies and improved conditions for both animals and keepers. It was June 17, 2014. A moonless night fell over Lake Victoria, Kenya. The small fishing village of Mbita Point had settled into darkness, except for a single tent pitched on the outskirts, a bright orange beacon against the black landscape. Inside slept Celeste Dubois, 38, a French backpacker who would never see the morning light. Celeste had built her reputation as an adventure traveler over a decade of increasingly remote expeditions. The former Parisian advertising executive had traded corporate life for the freedom of the road, financing her travels through a successful blog and photography sales to travel magazines. Her Instagram feed showcased her sleeping under the stars in the Sahara, hiking solo through Ethiopian highlands, and camping alongside Maasai villages. What her 40,000 followers didn't see were the numerous close calls, a near drowning in Mozambique, a robbery in Tanzania, and a severe case of malaria that had hospitalized her for a week in Nairobi. These brushes with danger had not made Celeste more cautious, but instead reinforced her belief in her own resilience. She had developed what experienced guides called third world traveler syndrome, the dangerous confidence that comes from surviving situations that should have taught humility. The community of Mbita Point had been dealing with unusually aggressive hyena behavior for nearly a month. Drought had pushed the animals closer to human settlements, and they had grown bold enough to snatch drying fish from village racks even during daylight hours. When Celeste arrived that afternoon, local resident Kwame Odiambo noticed her preparing to camp alone. He and two other villagers walked up the small hill where she was pitching her tent. They explained about the hyenas and suggested she stay in the village schoolhouse instead. Celeste smiled and continued hammering tent stakes, explaining she had encountered hyenas before and knew they were typically scared of humans. As darkness fell, Celeste's headlamp could be seen moving around her campsite. She cooked a small meal, and then the light disappeared as she retired for the night around 10 in the evening. The village fell quiet except for the occasional barking of dogs, a warning sign no one recognized in time. At 2:30 in the morning, villagers were jolted awake by human screams, high-pitched and desperate. The cries lasted only seconds before being replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the sounds of tearing fabric and low growls. Kwame and several other men grabbed torches and machetes, racing toward the campsite. What they found was a scene from a nightmare. Celeste's tent had been ripped open from the side facing away from the village. Her sleeping bag was dragged halfway out, soaked in blood. A trail of dark droplets led into the tall grass beyond. When they directed their torches toward the rustling sounds in the grass, they saw the glowing eyes of at least 4 hyenas. The animals were hunched over something on the ground, their muzzles dark with blood. The men shouted and advanced, but the hyenas retreated only slightly, unwilling to abandon their kill. Fearing for their own safety in the darkness, the villagers returned to gather more people. By dawn, a larger search party followed the drag trail and scattered remains. What they found shocked even the experienced hunters among them. Celeste's body had been dismembered and consumed with terrifying efficiency. Only her scalp, with its distinctive blonde hair and portions of her jaw, remained intact, found nearly 100 feet from the main feeding site. Within weeks of the tragedy, the village council took unprecedented action. Using funds from a regional tourism development grant, they installed solar-powered lights around the village perimeter. The 12 bright LED fixtures created a barrier of light that hyenas, naturally wary of bright illumination, rarely crossed. Local tour operators, recognizing both the human tragedy and potential damage to tourism, established a new safety protocol. Any solo traveler passing through Mbita Point was offered free, secure accommodation in specially constructed visitor huts or local guest houses. This simple intervention, shelter without cost, removed the economic incentive for budget travelers to risk camping alone. The lights transformed village life beyond safety. Children could study after dark. Preparations for the next day's fishing could extend into evening hours, and a small night market emerged in the newly illuminated central area. What began as a response to tragedy evolved into unexpected community development. Today, travelers approaching Mbita Point at night see the village as a cluster of lights against the dark landscape. a beacon of safety in the wilderness. Tour guides point out the memorial marker near where Celeste died, now surrounded by a small garden maintained by local schoolchildren. The solar lights require regular maintenance, and each time a bulb is replaced or a panel cleaned, villagers remember the French woman whose death changed their community. In the contest between human confidence and natural predators, technology now offers a balance, not eliminating the danger, but creating a boundary where both species can exist with greater safety on either side of the light. It was December 8, 2021. Rain pounded the tin roof of Exotic Treasures, a small pet store in Pekanbaru, Indonesia. Water pooled against the building's aging back wall, slowly seeping through cracks in the concrete foundation. Inside, a 23-foot reticulated python stirred in its inadequate enclosure, sensing the structural weakness that would soon lead to 10-year-old Aldi Nugroho's death. Aldi was known throughout his neighborhood as the Animal Whisperer. Small for his age, at just 4 feet 2 inches and 65 pounds, the fourth grader compensated with boundless energy and curiosity. His bedroom walls were plastered with wildlife posters, and his prized possession was a dog-eared encyclopedia of reptiles. Aldi's fascination with reptiles had grown after watching wildlife documentaries. He'd been asking for a pet gecko for his upcoming birthday, but his true fascination was with the massive reticulated python at Exotic Treasures. Store owner Denny Kurniawan had acquired the snake illegally, keeping it in an enclosure far too small for its 250-pound body. The previous week, heavy monsoon rains had caused damage to the shop's back wall. Kurniawan noticed water seepage but delayed repairs, focusing instead on a shipment of exotic birds. This negligence created the perfect conditions for what officials would later call a preventable tragedy. On that rainy Wednesday evening, Aldi finished dinner and told his parents he was visiting his friend Booty, who lived 3 doors down. Instead, the boys enacted their plan to sneak into the pet store after hours. Security footage showed them arriving at 7:42 in the evening. They found a 20-inch gap in the collapsed back wall, just large enough for them to squeeze through. Unknown to them, the python had escaped hours earlier and was hiding behind supply crates in the corridor, directly in their path. At 7:46, cameras captured Aldi crawling through the gap. Seconds later, his expression changed from excitement to terror as the python struck with lightning speed, jaws clamping onto his shoulder. Booty heard a muffled scream before silence fell. The python began constricting, cutting off Aldi's ability to call for help. Booty ran for help, but nobody believed him at first. By the time adults arrived at 8:23 in the evening, the python had begun its feeding process, dislocating its jaw to swallow Aldi headfirst. Emergency responders killed the snake to recover Aldi's body. The python had swallowed him to the shoulders. Authorities shut down the store, and Kurniawan faced multiple charges, including illegal wildlife trafficking and criminal negligence. The incident highlighted the dangers of the exotic pet trade. Reticulated pythons can grow over 25 feet and aren't suitable as captive animals in urban settings. This tragedy represented the intersection of human curiosity and our failure to respect dangerous animals. It was August 20th, 2018, a perfect summer morning in Montana's Flathead National Forest. The air was crisp at 62 degrees Fahrenheit as Heather Stein, 34, pedaled her mountain bike along the Whitefish Trail. The experienced cyclist had no way of knowing that around the next bend, a 400-pound grizzly bear was feeding on berries just 30 feet from the path. Heather wasn't supposed to be on the trail that day. The middle school science teacher had planned to meet friends for a group ride, but decided at the last minute she wanted some solo time before school started the following week. Standing 5 feet 6 inches and athletic from years of competitive cycling, Heather had moved to Whitefish, Montana 5 years earlier, drawn by the outdoor lifestyle. Colleagues described her as methodical and safety conscious. She carried bear spray on every ride and had completed wilderness safety courses. Heather knew these mountains better than most locals. Her classroom at Whitefish Middle School was filled with photos from her trail adventures, which she used to inspire her 7th grade science students about natural ecosystems. What Heather didn't know was that an unusually abundant berry season had drawn grizzlies down from higher elevations. Rangers had documented bear activity in the area just 2 days earlier, but hadn't yet posted warning signs on that particular section of the 22-mile trail system. The updated alerts were scheduled to be posted later that afternoon, a delay with fatal consequences. In her backpack was a half-finished lesson plan about ecosystem balance and predator-prey relationships, a topic she would never get to teach. Heather's GPS tracker showed she maintained a steady 12 miles per hour pace that morning, taking photos occasionally and stopping once to adjust her helmet. At 8:17, she approached a blind curve on a downhill section of the trail. Wildlife biologists later reconstructed what happened next. A female grizzly with a yearling cub had been feeding on a dense patch of huckleberries just yards from the trail. The bear was likely focused on fattening up for winter hibernation, consuming up to 20,000 calories daily. As Heather rounded the bend at speed, the sudden appearance of a human startled the bear. Instead of fleeing, the grizzly charged, covering the 30 feet between them in less than 2 seconds. Heather had no time to react. The impact knocked her from her bike immediately. Her GPS data showed a sudden stop, followed by erratic movement into the forest for approximately 40 yards, as the bear dragged her away from the trail. Experts believe she likely lost consciousness within seconds of the initial impact. The bear's powerful jaws and claws inflicted catastrophic injuries to her head, neck, and torso. A hiker discovered her abandoned bike 2 hours later and alerted authorities. Search teams found Heather's body partially buried under forest debris, a behavior known as caching, where bears cover their food sources to return to later. The autopsy confirmed Heather died from massive trauma and blood loss. Her bear spray was found still in its holster. She never had time to reach for it. DNA samples collected from bite wounds identified the specific bear, which was later tracked and euthanized by wildlife officials. The tragedy sparked debate in the whitefish community about trail safety and wildlife management. The Forest Service implemented new protocols, including daily trail inspections during berry season and immediate signage after any bear sighting. The trail system now features enhanced warning systems and real-time wildlife alerts accessible through a mobile app, technology that might have saved Heather's life. Her story serves as a somber reminder that in nature's realm, even the most prepared can find themselves at the mercy of ancient instincts and split-second timing. If you found these animal attack stories disturbing, prepare yourself. What we've uncovered will shock you. Click the next video now so you don't miss the most shocking wilderness encounters ever captured. The roar of the crowd, the thrill of competition. Sometimes it all ends in an instant. For these athletes, the game they loved became their final stage. In this chilling look at those who died before their fans, we uncover stories of talent cut short and the fine line between glory and tragedy, deaths that shook the sports world and reshaped safety forever. It was June 21, 2008. On that summer day at the Englishtown Raceway Park in New Jersey, thousands of fans gathered, buzzing with excitement and anticipation. Drag racing was more than just a sport to these fans. It was a test of speed, skill, and bravery. Among the roaring engines and burning rubber stood Scott Kalita, a veteran driver with a reputation as fierce as his blazing top-fuel dragster. That day at Englishtown, Scott was preparing for what was supposed to be a routine qualifying run. The weather was clear, the track freshly prepared, and his team worked meticulously to ensure the dragster was in peak condition. Fans watched eagerly as the familiar silhouette of Kalita's dragster rolled to the starting line. There was a quiet tension in the air, the kind that always comes just before a powerful machine unleashes its fury. As the green light flashed, Scott slammed the throttle and the dragster roared down the quarter-mile track. Everything seemed normal at first, but then just a few seconds into the run, disaster struck. Approaching the finish line at over 300 miles per hour, the engine suddenly exploded. A violent blast ripped through the dragster, sending metal fragments flying in every direction. The massive force shattered the rear tires, causing Scott to lose control. His car swerved violently from side to side, leaving thick black smoke trailing behind. The crowd gasped, some freezing in disbelief, as the dragster began to spin out of control. Scott fought desperately to keep the vehicle steady, but at those incredible speeds, there was little a human could do. The dragster careened off the track and smashed through the guardrail, crashing into the surrounding barrier with a catastrophic impact. Flames erupted instantly, engulfing the car in a fiery inferno. Track emergency crews raced to the scene, battling the blaze and attempting to reach Scott trapped inside. The silence that fell over the crowd was deafening, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the wail of sirens. Despite the quick response, the injuries Scott sustained were severe and ultimately fatal. The engines and safety gear designed to protect drivers could not withstand the violent force of that explosion and crash. Scott Kalita, a man who had lived his life chasing speed and victory, was gone in an instant. After the crash, people didn't just ask how the engine failed. They started thinking about how dangerous drag racing really is. The sport is all about going faster and faster, but Scott's accident showed that there are limits that can't be beaten. His final race wasn't just a terrible accident. It was a moment that made everyone realize even the best drivers aren't invincible. Scott's memory changed from just being about winning races to reminding everyone that behind every fast car is a person facing real danger every time they race. It was July 19, 1982, in Rome, Italy. Vladimir Smirnov, a 28-year-old Soviet fencing star, was competing in the World Championships. The arena buzzed with excitement as spectators gathered to watch the world's best fencers. Smirnov, the reigning Olympic gold medalist in foil, faced West German Matthias Baer in what should have been a routine match between two elite competitors. No one could have imagined that within moments, a freak accident would forever change the sport of fencing. Born in Rubizhne, Ukraine, Smirnov had risen to become the Soviet Union's premier fencer. Standing 6 feet 1 inch and weighing 172 pounds, he combined power with exceptional technique. His journey to the top culminated at the 1980 Moscow Olympics, where he captured gold in the individual foil competition, silver in the team foil, and bronze in the team épée events. By 1981, he had added a world championship to his impressive collection of medals. That fateful day in Rome, Smirnov stepped onto the piste wearing his standard protective gear, a mask made of steel mesh, a chest protector, and his white fencing uniform. The match began like countless others, with the two champions exchanging attacks and parries, their movements precise and calculated. Suddenly, during an intense exchange, both fencers attacked simultaneously, attempting to establish what's known in fencing as the right of way. Smirnov tried to block Baer's blade with an upward parry, but Baer avoided it. As they collided, Baer's foil blade snapped upon impact with Smirnov's chest protector. The broken blade, now jagged and sharp, continued its forward momentum with Baer's lunge. It pierced through Smirnov's mask, penetrated his eye socket, and drove deep into his brain. The arena fell silent as Smirnov collapsed onto the piste. Medical staff rushed to his aid while horrified spectators and fellow competitors looked on in disbelief. Baer stood frozen, devastated by what had just occurred. This wasn't just a sporting accident. It was a catastrophe that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Smirnov was immediately rushed to a nearby hospital where surgeons worked desperately to save him. The broken blade had caused severe damage to his brain. Despite being placed on life support, doctors soon determined he had no brain reflexes. For 9 agonizing days, Smirnov remained on life support while the fencing world prayed for a miracle. On July 28, 1982, Vladimir Smirnov was pronounced dead. The news sent shockwaves through the international sports community. The Soviet Union had lost one of its greatest champions, and the fencing world had experienced its most tragic moment. Baer, though absolved of any wrongdoing, carried the emotional burden of the accident. He left fencing in the aftermath but eventually returned, winning silver at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. Later, he became the head of Germany's National Fencing Training Center, dedicating himself to improving the sport. Smirnov's death became a watershed moment for fencing safety. The International Fencing Federation immediately began reviewing equipment standards. The carbon steel blades that had been standard were replaced with maraging steel, which is far less likely to snap. Masks were reinforced with stronger materials, and uniforms were upgraded to include Kevlar or high-strength nylon. The punch test for masks was introduced, requiring them to withstand 12 kilograms of force. A 5-year study later revealed that these changes had made fencing significantly safer than many popular sports. The research found injury rates 50 times greater in soccer than in fencing. In the last 100 years, there have been no reported deaths in U.S. fencing, and worldwide since Smirnov, only 7 confirmed confirmed fatalities in competition or practice. Today, fencing is considered one of the safest competitive sports, largely due to the changes implemented after Smirnov's death. His tragic passing, while devastating, ultimately saved countless lives through the safety improvements it prompted. Vladimir Smirnov's legacy lives on, not only in the medals he won and the skill he displayed, but in the safer sport fencing has become. In death, as in life, he changed the face of the sport he loved, a final, unintended contribution from a true champion. It was March 24, 2018, at the Deltaplex Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The G League's Grand Rapids Drive were playing their final regular season game against the Long Island Nets, with a playoff spot on the line. Zeke Upshaw, a 26-year-old shooting guard, was having a solid night with 11 points in 29 minutes. With just 47 seconds remaining and his team leading 100-97, no one could have predicted the tragedy about to unfold. Along the baseline, away from the ball, Upshaw suddenly dropped face down to the court, his palms turned upward, his body motionless. For 6 crucial seconds, no one seemed to notice. Then one opposing player reacted, followed by another, until finally the referee's whistle stopped play. The crowd of nearly 2,000 fans fell silent, watching as a young man's life began slipping away. Before that moment, Upshaw had been living his basketball dream. After playing at Illinois State and then as a graduate transfer at Hofstra, he had worked his way into professional basketball. His three-point shooting percentage of 40.9% that season showed promise for a potential NBA Summer League invitation. Even if the NBA didn't call, there was talk of opportunities in Europe's top leagues. What happened next would expose a tragic failure in emergency response. Medical staff huddled around him but didn't check his pulse. No one turned him over. No one appeared to check if he was breathing. 2 minutes passed before EMTs walked, not rushed, onto the court with a stretcher. 7 critical minutes went by before CPR began in the ambulance. A defibrillator visible on the stretcher was never used. About 1,600 miles away in Henderson, Nevada, Upshaw's mother Jewel watched the horror unfold on a Facebook stream. His girlfriend Julia Turner, whom everyone called his fiancée because he planned to propose after the season, screamed on the phone to Jewel as they watched helplessly. Messages scrolled by on Facebook. Prayers for Zeke. Say a prayer for Zeke. The investigation revealed disturbing details. 9 months before his death, Upshaw had collapsed at a Las Vegas gym. Blood tests showed elevated troponin, a protein released when the heart is damaged. Despite this warning sign, he was cleared to play after an overnight hospital stay. His discharge papers simply stated, "You may resume your normal activities when you are feeling back to normal." 40 minutes after his collapse, Upshaw's heart finally restarted at the hospital, but it was too late. 2 days later, on March 26th, his mother made the heartbreaking decision to disconnect life support. The autopsy revealed he had suffered from heart disease that went undetected, despite 3 different heart screenings in the previous 16 months. His funeral drew over 1,000 people to Chicago's South Side. An alderman spoke, as did former U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan. Upshaw was laid to rest at the legendary Oakwood Cemetery, near Jesse Owens's grave, a final tribute to a young man who had been a success story, raised by a single mother and earning his way to professional basketball. Zeke Upshaw's death led to significant changes in the G League's medical protocols. His mother created the Zeke Upshaw Foundation to educate schools and athletic organizations about sudden cardiac arrest. Her message became simple but crucial. When someone collapses, assume it's a heart issue first. She receives monthly notifications about similar incidents, each one reminding her of that terrible night. The tragedy of Zeke Upshaw wasn't just about a promising athlete taken too soon. It was about systemic failures in emergency response and medical screening. His death exposed how those first few minutes in a cardiac emergency can mean the difference between life and death. While other athletes have been saved from similar collapses since then, Upshaw's story remains a sobering reminder of why proper medical protocols matter. His legacy lives on through the foundation that bears his name, working to ensure that when the next athlete collapses, someone will know exactly what to do. It was October 14th, 2014. It started as a regular day for 23-year-old Peter Biaksangzwala, a talented midfielder for Bethlehem Vengthlang. Peter was known for his discipline, hard work, and love for football. As a rising star in the Mizoram Premier League, he had big dreams of playing at the national level. But no one could have imagined that his celebration after scoring a goal would take a devastating turn. Born in Mizoram, one of India's most football-passionate regions, Peter grew up idolizing players far removed from his world. He had worked his way through local leagues, surviving on minimal gear and borrowed cleats. But his speed, control, and midfield vision couldn't be ignored. Eventually, he joined Bethlehem Vengtlang in the Mizoram Premier League, a small but competitive circuit that offered Peter the structure and recognition he'd long hoped for. That day, Peter's team was up against Chanmari West FC in an important match at Lamual Stadium in Aizawl, India. In the 62nd minute, with the score tied, he saw his chance. Under the fading afternoon sun, Peter executed a well-timed shot, scoring an equalizer for his team. The crowd erupted in cheers as the ball struck the back of the net. Overcome with excitement, Peter decided to celebrate in a way he had long admired, by attempting a somersault just like his football idols Kaká and Ronaldinho. His teammates trailed behind as Peter sprinted toward the sideline, already airborne in mid-celebration. Peter had practiced the move before, but this time things went horribly wrong. In a single second, triumph turned to horror. As he flipped into the air, he miscalculated his landing. Instead of a smooth finish, he came down headfirst, his neck bending at a sickening angle. The stadium's atmosphere changed in an instant. His teammates, who had been celebrating with him, quickly realized something was wrong. Their joy turned to panic as they rushed to his side, signaling for medical help. Peter was in pain and unable to move. Medical staff rushed in, stabilizing his neck and signaling for a stretcher. The stadium fell silent, the earlier applause replaced by uncertainty. He was carefully carried off the field and taken to Aizawl Civil Hospital. Doctors performed a CT scan and found that his spinal cord had suffered severe damage at the neck, an injury so critical that even immediate surgery offered little hope. It was a devastating diagnosis, and they immediately began efforts to stabilize him. Despite their best attempts, Peter's condition worsened. He was moved to the intensive care unit, and his teammates, family, and friends held on to hope. For 5 days, doctors worked tirelessly to save him. But on October 19, 2014, Peter Biaksangzuala passed away. His club, Bethlehem Vengtlang, was devastated. To honor him, they announced that his jersey number, 21, would be retired. The Mizoram Premier League released a statement mourning his loss, calling it a heartbreaking day for football in the region. Peter was a dedicated midfielder known for his ability to break up attacks and support his team. His coach Danny Lalnan Mawia spoke about his character saying, "Peter was well-mannered and disciplined on and off the pitch. Players like him are rare." His passing also sparked conversations about the risks of acrobatic goal celebrations. While these moves are common in football, few had ever imagined that a routine celebration could lead to such a tragedy. It was December 2, 2005, on Oahu's North Shore, Hawaii. Malik Joyu, a 25-year-old Tahitian surfer known as Petit Prince, paddled out at the legendary Banzai pipeline. The waves were breaking at 8 feet, modest by pipeline standards, but still powerful enough to demand respect. The morning was beautiful, with clear skies and perfect conditions that had drawn dozens of the world's best surfers into the lineup. No one could have imagined that within hours, the surfing world would be mourning the loss of one of its most fearless big wave riders. Born in Moorea, French Polynesia, Joyeux had surfing in his blood. He began riding waves at just 8 years old, quickly developing a reputation for his fearlessness in heavy surf. Standing 5 feet 7 inches and weighing 150 pounds, Joyeux wasn't physically imposing, but his courage was immeasurable. By his early 20s, he had established himself as one of the premier surfers at Teahupu, Tahiti's infamous wave known for its thick hollow barrels breaking over a shallow reef. In 2003, Joyeux cemented his place in surfing history by winning the Billabong XXL Tube of the Year award for an impossible barrel at Pipeline. The following year, he appeared on the cover of Surfer magazine riding a monstrous wave at Teahupu, an image that became iconic in the surfing community. Despite his growing fame, Malik remained humble and kind, known for his infectious smile and generous spirit. That fateful December morning, Joyeux was among approximately 60 surfers vying for waves at Pipeline. The spot is notorious for its dangerous conditions, powerful waves that break over a shallow, razor-sharp coral reef just feet below the surface. For surfers, the reward of riding Pipeline's perfect barrels comes with tremendous risk. Around 10:30 a.m., Joyeux paddled for a wave that photographer Bruno Lemos described as not even that big for him. As Joyeux dropped in, something went wrong. The wave's thick lip came crashing down directly on top of him, driving him deep underwater. The force was so violent that it snapped his surfboard in half and tore the leash from his ankle. When Joyeux failed to surface, panic spread through the lineup. Surfers began searching frantically, diving underwater between sets to look for their friend. Lifeguards joined the search, but the powerful currents and poor visibility made it nearly impossible to find him. Approximately 10 minutes later, surfers spotted Joyeux's body floating in a nearby break. They quickly paddled him to shore, where lifeguards attempted CPR, but it was too late. Malik Joyeux was pronounced dead on the beach, becoming the 11th known fatality at Pipeline. As word spread, dozens of surfers paddled to shore and formed a circle on the beach, holding hands in prayer. The surfing community, known for its tight-knit nature, was devastated by the loss of such a beloved figure. Captain Bodo van der Leiden of the Ocean Safety Division later told reporters he was a very experienced big wave surfer, highlighting the sobering reality that even the most skilled athletes aren't immune to the ocean's power. Joyeux's death sent shockwaves through the surfing world, coming just months before the Pipeline Masters, the sport's most prestigious competition. Many surfers competed with heavy hearts, dedicating their performances to their fallen friend. Malik Joyeux's legacy lives on in the surfing community. He is remembered not just for his extraordinary courage in massive waves, but for his humility and joy. His approach to surfing, fearless yet respectful of the ocean's power, continues to inspire a new generation of big wave surfers. Though his life was cut tragically short, his impact on the sport remains immeasurable. It was May 6, 2016, at the Dinamo Stadium in Bucharest, Romania. The fans called it the hole in the ground. And on this evening, it would become the site of one of football's most preventable tragedies. Patrick Ekeng, a 26-year-old midfielder from Cameroon, had just come on as a substitute for Dinamo Bucharest in the 70th minute against Viitorul. The score was tied 3-3, and Ekeng was eager to make an impact. 7 minutes after stepping onto the pitch, Ekeng was jogging near the center circle when he suddenly collapsed. There was no contact, no warning. He simply fell backwards, his knees buckling beneath him. The stadium fell silent as players frantically waved for medical assistance. His teammate Sergiu Hanca reached him first, hearing what he described as something like the respiration of a pig, the sound of hypoxic gasping as Ekeng's brain starved of oxygen. Before that moment, Ekeng had fought his way through European football's lower ranks, starting in Cameroon on dusty pitches in Yaoundé, where his mother, a preacher, would sometimes cheer him on from the sidelines. He had played in France, Switzerland, and Spain before landing in Romania. Dinamo was supposed to be his chance to rebuild his career, earning around $5,000 per month. Just weeks earlier, he had scored his first goal for the club in a Romanian Cup semi-final against their rivals Steaua Bucharest. What happened next would shock the football world. The ambulance crew, later investigated for negligence, took nearly 3 minutes to reach Ekeng. The defibrillator they carried had a dead battery. Each minute that passed reduced his survival chances by 7%. Crystal Palace fan Stephen Carpenter, visiting as a football tourist, watched in disbelief as medical staff put aside the distinctive red defibrillator case, thinking it wasn't that serious. By the time he reached Floreasca Hospital just blocks from the stadium, it was too late. At 11:25 p.m., after showing no electrical activity in his heart for 5 full minutes, doctors pronounced him dead from cardiac arrest. The entire incident had been captured on television, leaving viewers and teammates in shock. The investigation revealed a cascade of failures. The private ambulance service, Pulse, had 14 out of 15 vehicles carrying dead defibrillator batteries. Phone calls intercepted by authorities caught staff discussing how to cover up their negligence. The doctor, Elena Mihaila Duta, was later given an 18-month suspended jail sentence and ordered to pay $227,000 in damages. She became the face of a systemic failure that cost a young athlete his life. Ekeng left behind a pregnant wife, Natalie, and another child. His death echoed tragically with Cameroon's football history. In 2003, Marc-Vivien Foé had died similarly during a Confederations Cup match. Dinamo Bucharest retired Ekeng's number 14 jersey, But the real tribute came in the form of stricter medical regulations in Romanian football. The aftermath revealed more painful truths. His January 2016 medical screening had missed any heart abnormalities, though experts later noted that such conditions are notoriously difficult to detect. His autopsy report was criticized by international medical experts for claiming he had 3 rare heart conditions simultaneously, something nearly impossible. Back in Yaoundé, Ekeng's friends hung a banner on the incomplete house he had been building. "A lion does not die, he sleeps. Rest in peace." His story became a grim reminder of how critical proper medical care is in professional sports. As his friend Salif Nogo would later say, he died because people didn't do their jobs. In the end, Patrick Ekeng's death wasn't just about a footballer who died too young. It was about a system that failed him, and the changes his death forced upon the sport. It was May 11, 1986 in Marseille, France. The Palais des Sports was packed with spectators eager to witness the World Fencing Classic semifinals. Under the bright arena lights stood Nikolai Dragunov, a 28-year-old fencing prodigy from Bolivia. Dragunov wasn't just any competitor. He had built a reputation for cold, calculated precision that left opponents bewildered. His 21-match winning streak made him seem invincible in international fencing circles. Unlike flashier fencers, Nikolai's style was methodical and ruthlessly efficient, a reflection of his disciplined upbringing. Born to a retired military father and factory worker mother in northern Bolivia, Nikolai's childhood was defined by structure and order. Fencing became his outlet, but also his perfect expression of control. Every thrust, parry, and footwork sequence was executed with mathematical precision. By 1986, he had become Bolivia's national champion. What no one knew that morning was that Dragunov had noticed a small crack in his visor, a seemingly insignificant fracture in the corner. With the match minutes away, he chose to continue with the damaged equipment, confident in his ability to control the match. The semifinal began with Dragunov facing a younger, more aggressive Italian opponent known for his unpredictable style. As expected, Nikolai dominated the early exchanges, methodically building his lead while maintaining perfect form. But in the fourth exchange, everything changed. The frustrated Italian launched a wild, overextended thrust. Nikolai countered perfectly, but in that violent collision, the opponent's blade, made from a brittle alloy designed for flexibility, shattered with a metallic shriek. The broken tip, now jagged and sharp, ricocheted upward with tremendous force. In a split second, the splintered metal found the cracked corner of his visor. The blade fragment punctured through the polycarbonate and drove deep into his forehead. The arena fell silent as Dragunov collapsed instantly. Medical staff rushed to his side, removing his mask as blood trickled down his temple. His breathing was shallow, his pupils unresponsive. Paramedics quickly transported him to a nearby hospital, where neurosurgeons worked desperately to relieve the mounting pressure in his skull. The diagnosis was grim: penetrating brain trauma with severe intracranial bleeding. For 4 days, the fencing world held its breath as Nikolai lay in a coma. But on May 15, 1986, he was pronounced dead. After the accident, there were no big speeches, just quiet, uneasy changes. The fencing officials didn't admit fault, but rules shifted behind the scenes. Stronger visors were introduced, brittle blades disappeared, and gear checks got stricter. Coaches adjusted, referees tightened up. No one said his name, but everyone moved differently, as if trying to erase the mistake without owning it. At his old training center, his locker stayed closed. No tribute, no ceremony, just silence. Younger fencers glanced at it now and then, not out of respect, but to remind themselves what the sport could take. It was March 29, 2008 in Zadar, Croatia. Hrvoje Čustić, a talented 24-year-old winger for NK Zadar, was doing what he loved most, playing soccer in front of passionate hometown fans. The match against HNK Sabalia had just begun, and the energy in the stadium was electric. No one could have imagined that within minutes, a routine play would lead to one of soccer's most heartbreaking tragedies. Čustić's journey in soccer began in his hometown of Zadar, where he joined the local club in 2000. His skill and dedication earned him a move to NK Zagreb in 2005, but the pull of home brought him back to Zadar in 2007. Known for his speed and determination, Hrvoje was a fan favorite, a local boy representing his city with pride. That fateful Saturday started like any other match day. Just minutes into the game, Čustić chased after a loose ball near the sideline. As he battled with an opposing player, neither focused on anything but gaining possession. The intensity of their challenge sent Čustić sliding off the field of play. What made this particular stadium dangerous was what lay beyond the touchline, a concrete wall positioned just 6 feet from the edge of the playing field. As Čustić slid off the pitch, his momentum carried him directly into this unforgiving barrier. The sickening sound of impact silenced the crowd as Hrvoje's head collided violently with the concrete. Medical staff rushed onto the field immediately. Players from both teams stood in shock, some turning away, unable to watch as doctors worked frantically to stabilize him. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Čustić was rushed to Zadar General Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery for a severe brain injury. For 5 days, the entire city of Zadar held its breath. Prayer vigils formed outside the hospital as fans, teammates, and family members hoped for a miracle. Čustić's condition initially appeared stable after surgery, giving everyone a glimmer of hope. But on April 2nd, his body temperature began rising rapidly due to a post-surgical infection. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Hrvoje Čustić passed away on April 3rd, 2008. The news devastated the Croatian soccer community and beyond. The Croatian Football Federation postponed all league matches for the following weekend as a mark of respect. An estimated 10,000 people attended his funeral, reflecting the impact he had on his community. His NK Zadar teammates served as pallbearers, carrying their friend on his final journey. The tragedy sparked important conversations about player safety in soccer stadiums worldwide. The concrete wall that claimed Čustić's life represented a hazard that should never have existed so close to the field of play. His death led to safety reviews at many stadiums, with particular attention paid to the areas surrounding the pitch. Years later, Hrvoje's memory lives on in Croatian soccer. His former teammate and close friend Danijel Subašić, who became Croatia's national team goalkeeper, paid tribute to Čustić after Croatia's victory over Denmark in the 2018 World Cup. After saving 3 penalties in the shootout, Subašić lifted his jersey to reveal a shirt bearing Hrvoje's image. Though FIFA issued Subašić a warning for the gesture, it showed how deeply Čustić's memory continues to resonate with those who knew him. When asked about his tribute during a press conference, Subašić broke down in tears, unable to speak about his friend, demonstrating that even a decade later, the wounds remain raw. Hrvoje Čustić's story reminds us that even in the beautiful game, tragedy can strike in an instant, forever changing lives and leaving an indelible mark on the sport's history. It was June 26, 2003, at the Stade de Gerland in Lyon, France. The FIFA Confederations Cup semi-final between Cameroon and Colombia was drawing to a close. The stadium was alive with excitement as Cameroon led 1-0, and Marc-Vivien Foé, their powerful 28-year-old midfielder, was doing what he loved most, dominating the center of the field. Before that fateful day, Foé had built himself into one of Africa's most respected players. Standing at 6'2", he was an imposing figure who had conquered both the English Premier League and French Ligue 1. He played for clubs like West Ham United, Manchester City, and Lyon, becoming a fan favorite wherever he went. His teammates called him Marco, and his infectious laugh could often be heard echoing through the changing rooms. That summer afternoon in Lyon, with just 72 minutes on the clock, television cameras captured a moment that would haunt football forever. Foé was jogging innocuously near the center circle, no other player around him. Suddenly, without warning or contact, he collapsed. The way he fell sent immediate shivers through the stadium. This wasn't a normal football injury. Medical staff rushed onto the field as teammates looked on with growing concern. They attempted to resuscitate him right there on the pitch before carrying him on a stretcher to the medical facilities beneath the stadium. For 45 agonizing minutes, doctors fought to restart his heart. But Marco would never get up again. The news of his death sent shockwaves through the football world. His teammates, who had been celebrating their victory in the dressing room, were devastated when Captain Rigobert Song delivered the tragic news. "Marco, Marco," he cried, telling them their friend was gone. Even the team's German manager, Winfried Schäfer, broke down when he saw Foe's mother and wife crying by his body. 2 autopsies would later reveal that Foe had been suffering from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick. Medical experts explained that people with this condition are 3 to 5 times more likely to suffer cardiac arrest during intense physical activity. The cruelest part? There were usually no warning signs until it was too late. The tragedy deepened when details of Foe's personal life emerged. He had been building a sports academy in his hometown of Yaoundé, sending money home each month to fund its construction. It was meant to be his legacy, a gift to help young Cameroonian players follow in his footsteps. Instead, it became his final resting place, with his body buried on the site of the unfinished complex. The impact of Foe's death was immediate and lasting. FIFA's medical protocols were overhauled, with improved cardiac screening and pitch-side emergency procedures becoming mandatory. Manchester City retired his number 23 shirt, while Lyon named a street after him. The football world united in grief during the Confederations Cup final between France and Cameroon, where French star Thierry Henry was seen in tears before kickoff. Perhaps most poignantly, Cameroon's national team was never quite the same. After winning the African Cup of Nations in 2000 and 2002 with Foe as their midfield general, they haven't won the tournament since his passing. His death marked not just the loss of a player, but the end of an era for Cameroonian football. Today, Foe's statue stands outside his abandoned academy in Yaoundé, a silent reminder of unfulfilled dreams. His nephew, Nama Mvogo, still visits weekly to clean his uncle's grave, feeling the weight of what he calls abandonment. The marble block marking Foe's final resting place remains the only well-maintained part of what should have been his lasting gift to Cameroonian football. Marc-Vivien Foe's story serves as a heartbreaking reminder that even the strongest athletes aren't immortal. His death changed football forever, leading to improved medical care that has likely saved other players' lives. But for those who knew him, who heard his laugh in the dressing room or saw his powerful runs across the midfield, no amount of positive change can fill the void left by his passing. It was March 31, 2007. The Bangkok arena buzzed with anticipation, thick with heat and cigarette smoke. Harsh floodlights illuminated the ring where 2 fighters prepared to face off. Among them stood Lito Cisnorio, a 24-year-old Filipino boxer with calloused hands and desperate dreams. The crowd, mostly local men packed shoulder to shoulder, roared as the fighters were introduced. What no one knew, least of all Lito himself, was that he wouldn't leave this ring alive. Lito had grown up in rural poverty in the Philippines, where boxing wasn't just a sport, but a potential escape route. His family couldn't afford much, but they supported his passion as best they could. Sometimes he'd skip meals just to afford gym time. His professional record wasn't stellar, 14 wins, 10 losses, 1 draw, but respectable for someone fighting from the margins of the sport. By early 2007, Lito was struggling. Promoters in the Philippines were looking elsewhere, and sanctioned matches were becoming scarce. When the opportunity came to fight in Thailand, he didn't hesitate, even though the match wasn't fully sanctioned by the Games and Amusements Board, or GAB, of the Philippines. The opponent was Chetchai Sasakul, an experienced former world champion with a 37-3-1 record. It was a dangerous mismatch, but Lito needed the money. The venue was less an arena and more a makeshift hall with bare essentials. Medical staff were present but minimal. No pre-fight brain scans, no neurologists on standby, just men with gloves, grit, and the will to win. The fight began with cautious movement. Chetchai, seasoned and fluid, danced with precision. Lito came in tense, punching wide, absorbing counters. The first round was a feeling-out process, but Chetchai's superiority was evident. He landed clean shots, jabs that stung, hooks that rattled. By the second round, Lito was already bleeding from the nose, his breathing labored. The third brought heavier blows. 2 hard body shots followed by a right cross that snapped his head back. Still, he fought on, swinging back with heart, if not accuracy. Spectators could see he was outclassed, but he wouldn't quit. Then came the fourth round. It started fast. Chachai, sensing the end, pressed forward aggressively. A three-punch combination, jab, hook, straight right, landed flush. Lito staggered. The crowd surged. Chachai moved in for the finish. A brutal right hand connected clean to the temple. Lito crumpled to the canvas, face first, arms limp. He was unconscious before he hit the floor. The referee immediately stopped the bout. Lito lay motionless as seconds ticked by before staff entered the ring. There was no immediate sign of revival. He was rushed to a local hospital where doctors discovered extensive bleeding in his brain. They operated that night, trying to relieve the pressure, but his body had already begun to shut down. Despite their efforts, Lito Cisnorio was pronounced dead the next day, April 1st, 2007. His death sent shockwaves through the boxing world, but nowhere more than in the Philippines. The GAB had not approved the fight. Lito had effectively traveled into a dangerous loophole, unsanctioned bouts where regulations were lax and oversight minimal. There was anger, grief, and blame. His family mourned publicly, devastated by the loss of their son, their hope. Filipino officials responded swiftly. Within days, the Games and Amusements Board banned Filipino fighters from competing in Thailand unless granted specific clearance and oversight. No more shortcuts. No more risking lives for a few $100s. In the weeks that followed, boxing forums lit up with debate. Promoters defended their decisions, some blaming Lito's handlers. Critics pointed to a broken system that allowed vulnerable fighters to step into unsafe rings. Lito's death became a sobering symbol, not just of boxing's brutality, but of what happens when the poor are left to chase survival in unregulated corners of the sport. It was October 23, 2010, in Fujairah, United Arab Emirates. Fran Crippen, a 26-year-old American swimming star, was competing in the FINA Open Water 10-kilometer World Cup. The race began early that morning, with dozens of the world's best swimmers diving into the warm waters of the Persian Gulf. No one could have imagined that by the end of the day, the swimming world would be mourning the loss of one of its brightest talents. Born in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, Crippen came from a family of swimmers. All three of his sisters were accomplished in the sport. His oldest sister, Maddie, had even competed in the 2000 Olympics. Standing 6 feet 2 inches with a powerful build, Fran was a natural in the water. After a successful college career at the University of Virginia, where he was an 11-time All-American, Crippen turned his focus to open water swimming. By 2010, he had established himself as America's premier open water swimmer, winning bronze at the 2009 World Championships in the 10K event. Though he narrowly missed qualifying for the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Crippen had his sights set firmly on the 2012 London Games. The race in the UAE was just another step toward that dream. That fateful day, conditions were brutal. The water temperature was reported at 84 degrees, though many swimmers later claimed it felt closer to 90 degrees. The air temperature soared to nearly 100 degrees, creating a dangerous combination for athletes pushing their bodies to the limit in a 2-hour race. As the swimmers made their way around the triangular course, several began showing signs of heat-related distress. Christine Jennings, an American teammate, had to be pulled from the water and hospitalized. Others complained of disorientation and extreme fatigue. Despite this, race officials made no adjustments. About 2/3 of the way through the race, Crippen told his coach he wasn't feeling well. In typical fashion for the determined athlete, he pushed on, but something was terribly wrong. When the race concluded, Crippen was nowhere to be found. His absence at the finish line initially caused confusion rather than alarm. It was his teammate and friend Alex Meyer who first raised the alert, insisting that Crippen was missing. As officials scrambled to organize a search, Meyer and other swimmers dove back into the water to look for their colleague. The search was chaotic and disorganized. There were no lifeguards stationed along the course, no safety boats monitoring the swimmers, and no emergency protocols in place. 2 hours after the race ended, Crippen's body was found by deep-sea divers, just 400 meters from the finish line near the final buoy. He was 30 feet underwater. The swimming world was devastated. An investigation revealed multiple multiple failures by race organizers. There had been inadequate safety personnel, no proper monitoring system, and no contingency plans for emergencies. The extreme heat had likely caused Crippen to suffer heat exhaustion, leading to unconsciousness and drowning. Crippen's former coach, Dick Schulberg, was outspoken about the tragedy. "FINA dropped the ball," he said. "They approved this event to be an Olympic event, but they never took the next step to protect the athletes." The German winner of the race, Thomas Lurs, echoed these sentiments. "These are very hot conditions for swimming," he said after the event, while Russian swimmer Evgeny Dratsev admitted he had never competed in such warm conditions before. Crippen's death sparked major reforms in open water swimming. FINA implemented new safety regulations, including temperature limits for competitions, mandatory safety boats, and GPS tracking for swimmers. His family established the Fran Crippen Elevation Foundation to advocate for athlete safety and support promising swimmers. Fran Crippen's legacy extends far beyond his achievements in the water. His tragic death forced the swimming world to confront serious safety issues that had been overlooked for too long. Today, open water swimmers compete under much stricter safety protocols, a bittersweet tribute to an athlete who loved his sport but paid the ultimate price for its inadequacies. It was March 4th, 1990, at Loyola Marymount's Gersten Pavilion in Los Angeles. The West Coast Conference Tournament semifinals were underway, and Hank Gathers, the Lions' unstoppable 6'7" forward, was doing what he did best, dominating the game. The crowd of 4,000 fans watched in awe as the 23-year-old soared through the air for yet another spectacular play. Just days earlier, he had told a reporter, "I feel great. I'm in the best shape of my life." With 13:34 left in the first half, Gathers caught a perfect alley-oop pass from teammate Terrell Lowry just past half court. He slammed home the dunk with his trademark power, giving his team a 25-13 lead over Portland. He slapped hands with Lowry, celebrating what would be his final basket. As he reached mid-court to set up on defense, Gathers took 2 lateral steps to his right and collapsed. The impact of his 220-pound frame hitting the hardwood echoed through the suddenly silent arena. The silence that engulfed Gersten Pavilion was deafening. Just months earlier, in December 1989, Gathers had collapsed during another game against UC Santa Barbara and was diagnosed with an abnormal heartbeat. Doctors prescribed beta blockers, but the medication made him feel sluggish on the court. His game suffered, and he gradually reduced his dosage, telling reporters his medication was almost down to nothing. Before his heart condition, Gathers was a force of nature. In the 1988-89 season, he led the nation in both scoring, 32.7 points, and rebounding, 13.7, becoming only the second player in NCAA Division I history to accomplish this feat. His team averaged an incredible 122.4 points per game, a record that still stands today. In one memorable game against LSU, he scored 48 points against future NBA star Shaquille O'Neal. He was projected to be a first-round NBA draft pick. Medical personnel rushed to his aid as his mother Lucille and aunt watched in horror from the stands. Gathers struggled to get up, briefly rising to his hands and knees before medical staff told him to stay down. He lost consciousness shortly after. Despite immediate CPR efforts and being rushed to nearby Daniel Freeman Marina Hospital, Gathers was pronounced dead at 6:55 p.m. The cause, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same heart condition that had claimed other athletes' lives. His death led to significant changes in sports medicine. Within 5 years, teams began carrying defibrillators as standard equipment. When Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field in 2023, the immediate medical response, learned from Gathers' tragedy, saved his life. His best friend Bo Kimble said, "Hank's death revolutionized the entire sports medicine industry." The Lions, led by Kimble, would make an emotional run to the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament. In a touching tribute, Kimble shot his first free throw of each game left-handed in honor of his southpaw teammate, making each one as tears flowed throughout the arenas. They set tournament records, scoring 149 points against defending champion Michigan, but fell short of the Final Four. Hank Gathers' story remains one of basketball's most tragic moments, a reminder that even the strongest athletes aren't invincible. His legacy lives on not just in the record books or the improved medical protocols that protect athletes today, but in the memories of those who witnessed his extraordinary talent and infectious spirit. As Kimble would later say, "Will he be forgotten? Absolutely not. It was August 17th, 1931 at Redgate Downs in Kentucky. The summer heat beat down mercilessly as thousands packed the wooden bleachers, their eyes fixed on the track. Among the jockeys that day was 22-year-old Jonah Bell, a rising star whose name was spreading across southern racing circuits like wildfire. Jonah came from nothing. His father worked as a stable hand, his mother a seamstress, their world defined by the weight of poverty. But Jonah possessed something special, an almost supernatural connection with horses. By his teenage years, he was winning races at county fairs, often on underfed colts that had no business placing. 2 years before Redgate, Jonah met Morning Gale, a lean, gray thoroughbred with a reputation for being unrideable. Other jockeys had rejected her, calling her temperamental and dangerous. But with Jonah, she transformed. Together they carved through tracks across Georgia, Alabama, and Kentucky, building a reputation not just for winning, but for their remarkable unity. What spectators didn't know was that Jonah had been experiencing troubling symptoms in the weeks leading up to Redgate. He complained of chest tightness and occasional dizziness to a fellow jockey, but would quickly dismiss it himself as just fatigue. On race day, stable hands noticed Jonah was paler than usual, quieter. But when Morning Gale was saddled and the bell prepared to ring, his focus returned. Racing wasn't glamorous then. It was grit and guesswork. There were no team doctors, no medical screenings, just men pushing their bodies to extremes for glory and meager paychecks. The gates burst open at 3:42 p.m. Morning Gale surged forward with 8 other horses. Jonah's hands remained steady on the reins, his body low and streamlined. They rounded the first bend in 3rd place, but by the halfway point, Jonah gave the slightest nudge and Morning Gale began to climb. 2nd place, then level with the leader. The crowd rose to their feet, the roar building to a crescendo. Then it happened. Just before the final stretch, Jonah's head dipped forward, his shoulders slackened, and his arms loosened at his sides. But he didn't fall. His body stayed upright, balanced in the saddle by instinct and years of hard training. To the crowd, it looked like he was crouching low for the final push. No one realized he was already gone. Morning Gale, sensing no command, kept running. With powerful strides, she overtook the leader and crossed the finish line half a length ahead. The crowd erupted in cheers, though some noticed Jonah's stillness. It wasn't until stable hands approached to lead Morning Gale back that they realized he wasn't responding. Chaos erupted as officials and medical personnel swarmed the track. Spectators stood in stunned silence as an ambulance carried Jonah's body away. The autopsy revealed what doctors suspected: an aortic rupture, a catastrophic event that gave no warning, no chance of survival. News of his death spread across the country. The haunting image captivated the nation, a horse completing her mission alone, guided only by the bond of muscle memory and trust. Her rider already departed. Jonah was declared the posthumous winner of the Redgate Derby. Morning Gale was retired shortly after, never to race again. She lived out her days in peaceful pastures, untouched by rains. Jonah Bell left behind not just a story, but a standard, a warning, and a legend that never truly crossed the line. It was October 24, 1971, at Tiger Stadium in Detroit, Michigan. Chuck Hughes, a 28-year-old wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, was playing in a hard-fought game against the Chicago Bears. The stadium was packed with over 54,000 fans, the atmosphere electric as the Lions trailed 28-23 in the final minutes. No one could have imagined that within moments, they would witness the only death to ever occur during an NFL game. Born in Philadelphia and raised in Texas, Hughes had defied the odds to make it to professional football. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 185 pounds, he wasn't the biggest or fastest player, but his determination and precise route running made him valuable. After starring at Texas Western College, now UTEP, Hughes was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in 1967 before being traded to Detroit in 1970. Though primarily a backup, Hughes was known for his work ethic and positive attitude. Teammates described him as a friendly, Western kind of guy, with a distinctive giggle and an infectious infectious smile. He was a devoted husband to Sharon and father to their 2-year-old son, Shane. That fateful Sunday, Hughes entered the game in the fourth quarter after starter Larry Walton suffered an ankle injury. With just over 2 minutes remaining, Hughes made a spectacular 32-yard catch, his first and only reception of the season. He was immediately hit hard by 2 Bears defenders but got up and jogged back to the huddle. A few plays later, with 1 minute and 2 seconds left on the clock, Hughes ran a deep pattern as quarterback Greg Landry threw to tight end Charlie Sanders. As Hughes turned to head back toward the huddle, he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed face first onto the turf near the Chicago 20-yard line. Initially, some players thought he might be faking an injury to stop the clock, a common tactic in those days. But Bears linebacker Dick Butkus, who was nearest to Hughes, immediately recognized something was terribly wrong. Butkus frantically waved toward the Lions bench, calling for medical help. Team doctors Edwin Guys and Richard Thompson rushed onto the field along with trainers. They performed CPR as the stadium fell eerily silent. A doctor from the stands even ran down to assist. Hughes was quickly loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to Henry Ford Hospital, but it was too late. At 5:34 p.m., Chuck Hughes was pronounced dead. The autopsy revealed that Hughes had died of a heart attack caused by a massive coronary thrombosis, a blood clot that had blocked a coronary artery that was already 70% blocked by atherosclerosis. The report also mentioned old scarring on the posterior wall of the heart, suggesting he had suffered a previous, undetected heart attack. Most shocking was that Hughes had shown warning signs. 7 weeks earlier, he had collapsed in the locker room after a preseason game against Buffalo and spent 4 days in the hospital. Doctors diagnosed a possible spleen injury, missing the heart condition that would ultimately take his life. After Hughes was taken from the field, the game resumed for its final 62 seconds. The Bears ran out the clock, and players left the field unaware of the tragedy unfolding at the hospital. Only later in the locker room did the Lions learn they had lost their teammate. The NFL community mourned Hughes deeply. The Lions retired his number 85 and wore black armbands in his memory. His death led to improved cardiac care at NFL stadiums, including the introduction of defibrillators and better emergency protocols. Chuck Hughes' tragic story remains a sobering reminder of the fragility of life, even among elite athletes in their prime. His legacy lives on not just in the safety improvements his death inspired, but in the memories of a kind, determined player who lived his dream until his final moments on the field. It was October 13, 2008 in Chekhov, a small city just outside Moscow. The Ice Hockey Center 2004, a modest arena holding just 3,300 fans, was alive with the sounds of sticks hitting ice and crowds cheering. For the fans who came to watch Avangard Omsk take on Vityaz, this seemed like any other Continental Hockey League game. No one could have known they were about to witness one of hockey's most tragic moments. The air was electric that evening as 19-year-old Alexei Cherepanov, nicknamed the Siberian Express, took to the ice alongside his teammate, NHL legend Jaromir Jagr. Cherepanov was everything a team could want in a young star. Talented, charismatic, with a brilliant smile that matched his scoring touch. He had already broken Pavel Bure's rookie scoring record with 18 goals, and this season was proving even more promising with 7 goals and 5 assists in just 14 games. As the third period wound down, Cherepanov and Jagr completed what seemed like a routine shift together. The young forward skated back to the bench, probably thinking about his next time on the ice. But there wouldn't be a next time. Without warning, Cherepanov collapsed on the bench. The crowd fell silent as confusion spread through the arena. A reporter doing a minute-by-minute account for Sportbox.ru noted only that someone on the Avangard bench is unconscious or ill, and that it was an incomprehensible situation. A player simply cannot get up from the bench. What happened next would haunt Russian hockey forever. There were no ambulances at the arena. They had left during the game. The defibrillators weren't working properly. As medical personnel scrambled to help the fallen player, precious minutes ticked away. Despite their efforts, Cherepanov was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. He was just 19 years old. The investigation that followed painted a picture more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Cherepanov had been suffering from myocarditis, chronic inflammation of the heart, for at least a year and a half. His blood contained traces of cordiamin, a performance-enhancing drug. Team doctors were accused of knowing about his condition but trying to treat it themselves instead of consulting proper cardiologists. The fallout was swift and severe. The Continental Hockey League suspended Avangard's general manager, president, and team doctors indefinitely. The league's vice president Vladimir Shalayev didn't mince words. Our sanctions are harsh, but we are confident that prosecutors will also make their decision regarding this case. For the New York Rangers, who had drafted Cherepanov 17th overall in 2007, the loss was especially painful. They had been working to bring him to New York, hoping he would become part of their rebuilding process. Rangers assistant Mike Polino had visited him in Omsk just months before, finding a young man full of energy, full of enthusiasm, and really excited about his future in New York. Instead of watching Cherepanov light up Madison Square Garden, the Rangers held a moment of silence for their fallen prospect. His death led to major changes in the KHL, including mandatory medical examinations for young players. 3 players under 21 were immediately disqualified for medical reasons after the league implemented new screening protocols. Cherepanov's story serves as a grim reminder that even the brightest stars can be extinguished in an instant, and that proper medical care isn't just about protocol, it's about saving lives. His legacy lives on not just in the records he set, but in the changes his death brought to protect future players from similar tragedy. It was April 2nd, 2005 in Denver, Colorado. The downtown athletics center buzzed with excitement as spectators gathered for the Colorado Golden Gloves tournament. 34-year-old Becky Zerlentis found herself beneath the arena lights, sweat already forming on her brow as she faced her younger, faster opponent. The protective headgear was in place, mandatory for amateur bouts, but no one could have predicted it wouldn't be enough. Becky wasn't your typical boxer. With a PhD in geography and a tenured teaching position, she defied expectations. Her students knew her as the kind, brilliant professor who challenged their minds, while her opponents knew her as the disciplined fighter who had been training for over a decade. Despite her experience, there had been subtle warnings, minor dizzy spells during training, fleeting headaches that came and went. Nothing serious, she told herself and others, just normal fatigue from balancing academia and athletics. She brushed these aside, focused on the challenge ahead. The first round was evenly matched. Becky moved with her footwork, guarding her face, strategically jabbing to maintain distance. But her opponent was relentless, cornering her against the ropes multiple times. By the second round, the momentum shifted. Becky absorbed more punishment than she delivered. Her responses slowed, though her stance remained strong. The third round revealed a noticeable dip in her energy. Her opponent sensed weakness and surged forward. A combination landed, a quick jab followed by a heavy right hook. Becky's head snapped sideways. She staggered backward, gloves still raised but clearly unsteady. Then came the decisive blow, clean, hard, direct to the side of her head. Her body went limp before hitting the canvas with a dull thud that seemed to silence the entire arena. The referee rushed in immediately. Medical staff were at her side within seconds, but this wasn't a typical knockout. Becky didn't respond to stimuli. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes remained closed. The crowd fell silent as confusion and concern spread through the venue. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, sirens cutting through the night. Despite the doctors' desperate efforts, Becky never regained consciousness. The blunt force trauma had caused catastrophic brain injury. Hours later, she was pronounced dead, becoming the first woman in U.S. boxing history to die in a sanctioned match. News of her death spread rapidly across sports networks and college campuses. The boxing community was stunned. Her students were devastated. She wasn't just any competitor. She was a scholar, a mentor, a daughter, a friend who had touched countless lives. But even amid the tributes, changes, and honors, the truth lingered. No rule adjustment could bring her back, and though the world moved forward, her death remained a solemn warning etched into the sport's history, that sometimes, no matter how much heart you have, it just isn't enough. Thanks for watching. Sometimes the most powerful moments in sports aren't about victory, but about the risks athletes take every time they step onto the field. If this hits you hard, stick around. There's more where tragedy, risk, and raw emotion collide on the world's biggest stages.